All right, Uma Fight Camp, going to answer a question. I'm glad that some of the videos, the past videos, or the most recent videos we've posted has helped people. I've already gotten some very positive emails saying that it has helped a lot of people. Some of the information that I've posted from my personal experience. We will continue to do that. As I've said before, there are some changes, even changes in moniker that we will be using, or changes in name that we will be using. I won't say too much about it, but it will actually be more in line with what we're about. And the website is still being worked on. I know I've said the website is being worked on some time ago, but we are perfectionists, which you probably know. And we want that website to be something that we can be proud of. All right? Okay, I want to answer a question that was posed to me on the Filipino knife fighting. All right, the gentleman said that he hadn't heard me say much about Filipino-style knife fighting, and although it's very popular, you know, he has questions about it. He wants to know about my opinion on this Filipino knife fighting. Okay, first of all, let me say this. I'm not trying to insult anyone, but there are people who are bent on tradition. Often karate, which is the whipping boy and I will be posting a video on that, some of the hypocrisy that people had dealing with karate in the past, and how all of a sudden now, you know, you don't hear many people coming out saying how wrong they were, when in fact, for the first 4 years of our tenure on YouTube, all we heard were things about, you know, insults based on karate, you know, insulting karate. Well, you know, jokes about karate, whatever. And now karate is this big thing, and people are now so interested in karate, which I think is laughable. But I will post a separate video on that, and you can be rest assured I will be going in on a lot of people. But on this issue of Filipino knife fighting, let me say this. Well, let me ask a question. Of course, you won't be able to answer it, but I will just put it out there, right, as sort of like a tongue-in-cheek type of question. What does a Filipino knife fight look like? All right, a knife fight in the Philippines, what does it look like? Okay, time's up. I know what a Filipino knife fight looks like. It looks like a knife fight in New York City. A Filipino knife fight, a knife fight in the Philippines looks like a knife fight in Los Angeles. A knife fight in the Philippines looks like a knife fight in the UK. All right? That's essentially what it looks like. Okay? Now, I want to say this. The idea of passing a knife past you, that's good. That's brilliant. Why? Because the only way to defend against a knife, all right, is actually to pass it past you. This idea of blocking it with all kinds of shapes and things like this kind of self-defense system that was supposedly made in the prisons and was used against shanks and stuff like that, and is sold to black people, you know, young black kids, and particularly in the United States, and in particularly in the Northeast, I think it is a sham. And out of my respect for young black brothers, you know, I don't crush their dreams or crush their aspirations by talking about it. But the fact of the matter is, you're not going to block shanks. You're simply not going to do it. No blocking style, okay, is going to work against shanks, okay, or against knives. So the only way, really, the best way to deal with a knife, if you're not grabbing the offending arm, the offending limb that's holding the knife, the best way of dealing with the knife is to get it past you. I understand that. All right. But you cannot continue to just do this unending pattern of trying to deflect a blade, because sooner or later, the assailant's creativity is going to win out. Okay? Someone trying to kill you is extremely resourceful, extremely creative. All right? That's a fact. So this constant thing here, right, is only going to end up in that knife finding a pathway to your heart. That knife finding a pathway to your jugular. That knife finding a pathway to your liver. Okay? That is not to say that passing a knife past you is not the best way. It is the best way. And not only that, to hold your arms in this way is the best way to hold your arms. okay, when you're passing, because your veins and your arteries are not exposed. All right, got that. But let's sit that here. The reality is that your mind has a great deal to do with how you deal with a knife. Your mind has a great deal to do with how you deal with a knife, and I don't care where you're from. I don't care where you're from. You can do this all day, right? You can train in Kali and Silat. You can train with Dan Inosanto and Dan Inosanto's cousin and people who train with Dan Inosanto. You can do that all day. Trust me. Your mind has a say on how you deal with a knife. It does. Now, I'm not talking about your brain, that 9 ounces of gray matter housed in your skull. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your mind. When I talk about mind, in layman's terms, I'm talking about the relationship between your brain and your nervous system that equals the mind. That's what I'm talking about, okay? The interaction between your brain and your nervous system, the mind, okay? So, that's what I'm talking about. Your mind has several functions. 2 of the most important functions that your mind has, all right, is 1, to keep you alive, and 2, to keep you relatively healthy while you're alive. Those are 2 main functions of your mind, okay? Now, keeping that in mind, right, let's look at when you're training. When you were training with a plastic dull knife, right, your mind will reflect that. Your training will reflect that you were training with a plastic dull-edged knife, okay? Take another plastic knife. It's still plastic, all right? But now the edge is sharp. Your mind will be agitated in relation to the amount of danger that now sharp-edged plastic knife poses to your health. Okay? Now take a metal knife that is dull-edged. It's a metal knife that is dull-edged. Your mind will become agitated. I don't care how much you train. Your mind will reflect. Your mind, your brain and your nervous system, the interaction between the brain and the nervous system will reflect the fact that it is metal, that it's not plastic. And metal is less forgiving than plastic on average. We have hard plastic, but metal on an average is less forgiving than plastic, okay, in a way of injury, all right, in a way in regards to the injury it can inflict upon the human body, okay? Now let's take that same metal knife that's not dull and make it sharp. All right? Again, your agitation, the relationship between your brain and your nervous system now will become reflective of the fact that it is a sharp piece of metal. Okay? AKA a knife, a shank. That being the case, whether you are from the Philippines or whether you are from New York City or whether you are from the UK, the bottom line is you do not, by virtue of what your mind's function is, you are not going to be comfortable enough to stay in front of a knife and do this. You're not going to be able to do that. I don't care how much you train. You may go 1-2. 1-2, you may go 3. But this unending, very smooth, very calm way of deflecting a knife, okay, does not happen. It does not happen. All right? So this whole idea of giving you this is based on, yes, training. It is based on trying to install skills in people. But it is based on trying to install skills without understanding the psychological makeup of the people they are trying to install their skills in. So while you may want something, your mind is the master and the bastion, right? Your mind has the final say as to how you are going to respond when your life is in danger. So when you look at much of this Filipino training, it is not realistic. That is why a knife fight in the Philippines is no different, looks no different than a knife fight anywhere else in the world. Okay? Much of that is based on tradition. When we think tradition, the first thing we think about is, oh, karate's tradition. But you have tradition in boxing. People still teach the left hook like this, even though professional fighters throw their left hook like that. There's tradition in boxing. There's tradition in BJJ. There's tradition in karate, of course. There's tradition in Muay Thai. There's tradition in Kali. There's tradition in Silat. There are many takedowns in Silat that absolutely I would never recommend using. Crossing the feet and settling down and taking the leg and pushing the knee so the person falls down. You know, this is beautiful and people love it. Try doing it on the pavement. Try it against a live resisting opponent. Even if you look at Kali, someone throws the punch and you pass, it's 1, 2. Why is it 1, 2? One punch comes and then block here, and then turn in, and then you gunt with the elbow, and then you come back and flip it back. I mean, the arm literally has to be staying out in one place for 3 minutes, right? But it's still sold. And what happens is you see these people and they say combat, combat. And when you see this combat, you're still looking at people who still continue to tell their partner to hold the limb out, make it necessary for the partner to hold the punch out for 5 minutes while you dance around it. But it's called combat, and people love it. Because there's tradition even in Kali. There's tradition even in Silat. There's tradition even in Wing Chun. And to the degree that people do not test these things for love of tradition, they are putting the people who trust them in jeopardy, the lives of those people in jeopardy. If you really want to look at a knife system, who are the best knife fighters? Who are the best knifers? Not knife fighters. Because really people who are adept at using a knife are not necessarily interested in knife fighting. They're interested usually in just killing a person. All right? So if you look at knifers, who are the best knifers? Are they the people from Kali? Are they the Filipino people? Are they the Malaysian people? Are they the very best? No. The very best knifers, right, are actually prison assassins. Prison assassins. They are the best. And some of the best in the world are in the United States prisons. Let's just put it out there, right? In their system, their knife system, you can learn in 20 minutes. Their knife system, you can learn in 20 minutes. And it is best. And why is it best? Because when they go to do something, they don't go to hurt someone, because if they go to hurt the individual comes back and gets them. They go to kill a person. They go to kill the individual. And they have to do it in a very short period of time, because the correction officers are going to shoot them or with live bullets or tear gas or whatever the case might be, or beat them over the head with sticks, whatever the case is, right? They have a short period of time to do it, and they don't want the person to come back and retaliate, right? So who has the best way of dealing, who has the best knife system, right? It's actually prisoners. It's life prisoners, assassins in prison. Now, I'm not glorifying those people, and this is only for information purposes. But what I am trying to tell you is there is no substitute whatsoever for hand-to-hand training than dealing with hand-to-hand. There is no substitute for hand-to-weapon than people who have dealt hand-to-weapon. There is no substitute for knife training than people who have had to use their knife to protect themselves against a real threat or an imagined threat. So Filipino knife fighting, it has its way, it has its reasons, it has its objective, but much of that is based on tradition, and the kind of tradition that can get an individual killed, because these individuals are not trusting you in the sense of hand-to-hand, they're trusting you in knife-to-hand and knife-to-knife, and to be selling these kind of things to people who quite likely can lose their lives believing that certain things work when they don't work. All right, I think it's a travesty of justice. However, people out there to make money. However, people like the exotic. However, you know, the more exotic the more exotic a technique, the more people love it and will buy it, and people can buy material things, and people can have elaborate websites, and people can become famous, and people can fill their schools and all these other things, right? So that's the story behind that. But Filipino knife fighting, really, look at what happens in the Philippines. A knife fight in the Philippines is no different than a knife fight anywhere else. And why? Because when all is said and done, the simpler the knife system, the better the knife system, because you can install a certain amount of really functional daily techniques through repetition, and that individual will automatically become accustomed to doing that without much contemplation and without much minimal thought. All right, so do I support the Filipino method of training with the knife? On average, absolutely not. I simply do not. Stage 1, Stage 2, Stage 3 in Filipino knife fighting is absolutely ridiculous. I think the best way, the best knife users actually could teach you their system in 20 minutes, because that's all it should take to learn a knife system. The rest of the time should be based on you getting your mind able to implement it and to dealing with a knife up close and personal. Uma Fight Camp, Safe Carmen. Train hard, train smart. See you next video.